see you all. This is a lot to take in, and a Christmas Eve document dump. Remember, this was deadline was on Friday to release all these files according to the law that Trump was forced to sign into law. These documents, we still haven't seen all of them. There's still a lot more potentially that are out there. And now we have this new amount of information. Trump's name is referenced again and again. Again, no one's alleging Trump did anything wrong criminally or anything the like, but does today's document give a window into why Trump fought so hard for the release against the release of these documents?
Well, to be candid, I think it's unclear because we have looked through. I spent much of the time since the documents released looking at the mentions of Trump and then Donald Trump, as I'm sure many of us have. A lot of them are just very innocuous mentions. You know, his name just in passing in news clippings, which is one of the reasons why he's in there a lot. But Caitlin, I also found the reference to those flights really interesting that Caitlin mentioned, and that finding actually came out during Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal proceedings when the discovery process was going on. But I think the way that the Justice Department prosecutor phrased that, you know, he was telling his colleagues, "I want you to know for your situational awareness, I don't want this to be a surprise down the road." That at a minimum just kind of illustrates the Justice Department sensitivities around this case, because that email was marked January 2020. Obviously, the president was still in office that day. And obviously, you know, we're still looking through the files. We're looking through where the president is referenced. What does this mean? And again, it's important to remember he's never been accused of any wrongdoing. When we've asked the White House for comment, they referred us to the Justice Department statement saying there are a lot of these, you know, unfounded allegations in here.
Yeah, and we'll get to that Justice Department statement in a second. But it's you know, look, this is embarrassing for the president. I mean, this letter that was signed by Jay Epstein to Larry Nassar. I mean, Larry Nassar is serving a 60-year sentence for sex crimes, for abusing more than 150 women. And here is Jay Epstein. It says, you know, Jay Epstein writing about Donald Trump in such a lewd and vile way. Of course, the president doesn't want that out there.
Right, and that letter is grotesque, especially when you consider the magnitude of the crimes that both of these men were accused of. That letter would not be admissible, for example, in any court case, not that there is one taking place. So you have to look at it in that light. But there clearly are reasons why this is embarrassing to the president and politically difficult. Ironically, this is the reason when you're talking about people who haven't been accused of any wrongdoing, why the FBI and the Justice Department typically doesn't release documents publicly about other cases. In this case, the president was talking about that yesterday with reference to Bill Clinton, talking about how it tarnishes people's reputations. But there's another set of victims here, and that is the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein. And I think the public interest in this case is being borne out for disclosure just because they have so often been denied justice, and their day in court was denied them by the death of Jeffrey Epstein. So in that sense, I think the public interest weighs towards disclosure here.
And the Justice Department's rebuttal has been really something to see. I mean, this tweet they put out this morning calling some of these documents, not saying which documents, but some of these documents contain untrue and sensationalized claims made against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. They went on to say that, to be clear, the claims are unfounded and false. If they had a shred of credibility, they would have been weaponized against President Trump already. I mean, there are all sorts of people who are mentioned in here in these documents. They talk about one person, President Trump, in
They
this
talk about one person, and I think it's notable in contrast to on Friday when some of the documents came out that had pictures of Bill Clinton, and there were lots of claims being made by Justice Department officials about what those showed, and trying to put the spotlight on Clinton as being guilty in some way, even though Trump himself, as we're talking about, said, "Oh, Bill Clinton is." I'm going to read to you what the Epstein transparency files, the act says. It requires the Attorney General to release all documents and records in possession of the Department of Justice relating to Jeffrey Epstein and for other purposes. That is off the White House website. It says this was signed by law, signed into law by the president. They are not following that law.
Yeah, and the question is, when will it be in full compliance?
Right.
And if that's going to actually happen soon, will happen Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, perhaps, as we've known bad news to get buried over the holidays. We'll see. But just about, you mentioned about the Trump and his response and the Bill Clinton. Remember, the initial trove of documents that came out of what happened Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, perhaps, as we've known bad news to get buried over the holidays. We'll see. But just about you mentioned about the Trump and his response and the Bill Clinton. Remember, the initial trove of documents that came out on Friday included a number of references to Bill Clinton, had some unflattering photos of Bill Clinton. Again, just like Trump, Bill Clinton has not been charged with doing anything wrong here criminally, but the White House has jumped all over that initially. Those Bill Clinton photos, even Carolyn Levitt posted about this, saying, "Oh my," about one of Bill Clinton, a picture of him in a hot tub with someone's face blacked out there. Stephen Chung called him Slick Willie. And then Trump had sounded much different than his own aides when he was asked about all of this just yesterday.
I don't like the pictures of Bill Clinton being shown. I don't like the pictures of other people being shown. I think it's a terrible thing. A lot of people are very angry that pictures are being released of other people that really had nothing to do with Epstein, but they're in a picture with him because he was at a party, and you ruin a reputation of somebody. So a lot of people are very angry that this continues. A lot of Republicans are angry because of the fact that it's just used to deflect against a tremendous success.
A lot of Republicans are angry because of the fact that it's just used to deflect against a tremendous success, Trump says, about a law that was passed with just one person voting against it in both chambers.
I was just about to say that. Yes, for a party that, wants a lot of attention on what they've done, they were the ones who voted for this to happen, and Trump signed it into law. Listen, hearing Trump defend Bill Clinton sounds like he's talking about himself. He's embarrassed. He doesn't want pictures, these letters, a number of things that we don't know out there about himself. And I think he's saying, you shouldn't even allow someone like Bill Clinton to be out there in such a way as well. It's interesting that the White House is obviously, it's unsurprising they're putting Bill Clinton out there, but even Bill Clinton's spokeswoman is saying, there's nothing to hide here. This isn't about us. This isn't about the former president. This is about the current president. They should be as transparent and open as we are to just having this about.
Yeah, and the question is, at what point will these documents come out? Because, underneath all this fight in Washington, the fight with the president and the rest, and what it means for the president, there are victims here that were, of course, impacted by this horrific sex trafficking scandal. And the victims, the ones that are talking publicly, are simply not satisfied with what has been released so far, particularly all the redactions that have come out. So we'll see eventually what else ultimately emerges. All right, what did the Kennedy Center